Welcome to the OC. I'm your host, Phil, and this is my co-host, Corey, and we are Ordered Chaos. What's new, buddy?
What's new? Okay. Funny you mentioned that. Two new things, both in relation to previous episodes we've had, or three new things.
Nice.
So one new thing, Google, remember we talked about, hey, we're hoping AI is either a benevolent tyrant or a, what was the term? Something psychopath, a righteous psychopath.
Oh,
That's
we're
what we're
hoping it's
figuring.
not a righteous psychopath.
But those are our two options, and I've got my money on the benevolent tyrant.
Right, right.
It turns out Google has been firing its ethics research, AI ethics researchers, and got itself disinvited to one of the conferences it sponsors.
Oh, it's sponsored. No, not.
Yeah, so I don't know if Google is still a sponsor or if they just weren't allowed to show up. Not sure, but yeah.
Okay.
But they fired one of their AI ethics researchers a while back, and it's that sort of thing that
so they have without ethics.
Not with, it's one of. I think they have a bunch. So, but
Probably
they got
not.
rid of one of them. So I don't know the exact details of why they got rid of them.
Right. So, but they just can't be part of this conference.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. Like they're not going to be able to. I think they can. I think the conference will still accept their money. I suspect. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. And I think AI in itself, right? I mean, ethics is as we talked about in the last podcast is a pretty big part of the future of AI.
And this is what we talked about before about this thing that we're going to birth is going to look like. It's going to be the results of, I mean, there's going to be some nature arguments true, but there's going to be a lot of nurture. And if we don't do this right, oh my God.
Oh my God.
The other cool thing,
yes.
Elon Musk, SpaceX. So the guy who's completely against killer robots has a robot dog walking around the SpaceX site that when one of the explosions happened.
I've seen that dog before. However, it's actually working. This dog is doing a job.
Yes.
It's a little fucking weird. I don't care who you are. It's trotting around and
I don't know how autonomous it is. I think its name is Zeus or something.
Yeah.
But it's the whole idea of it's essentially the same thing you would do if you were dealing with unexploded ordnance, right?
Oh.
The bomb disposal guys will send robots in with cameras and articulator arms. In this case, they sent a dog in, I guess.
Well, it is at the rocket. So maybe it's, at a crucial point because he's had 4 or 5 explode.
Yeah, this was one of the explosion sites. So I guess they figure send the robot dog in. Now that dog is probably worth more than you and I put together if you harvested our organs, our real estate, whatever. Yeah.
Nobody wants my organs. None of them.
They're all the horses. Feed them the horses, Phil.
That's right. There you go.
And back to the first episode, COVID.
Oh my God.
I don't know if this is an issue of tit for tat, but apparently China subjected a bunch of U.S. diplomats to anal swabs, which is one of the methods. Yeah, yes. It's one of the methods by which you can go off and do for COVID. So in Ottawa, for example, they don't do anal swabs, but they're doing wastewater analysis.
Yeah, I've heard. We talked about that in the first podcast. How they're examining the.
It's a shitty job.
It's a shitty job.
I wonder how the U.S. diplomat's saying, like, do I have a choice?
They'll like bend over. Yeah. Hey, Jim. All right, listen.
So that's in the news. Congratulations, folks. You're all caught up.
I had no idea they were doing anal probing for COVID.
Apparently China's in the forefront of it. I guess it's less invasive. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. It's
like, where do you stop? Do you just do a gentle swab, or is it you really get in there?
You just plunge the. Stay still. Try not to. Don't squirm.
Don't clamp down. Don't clamp down.
Yeah. Breathe through this. You're gonna be fine.
Bite on this.
Got it. Them Chinese, they really know their stuff.
What are we talking about tonight, Phil? We're talking about stuff to know.
Yeah. The Montauk Project. So I totally said it wrong at the end of our last podcast. I believe I called it the Mantuck.
Yes, which
will be a future episode here.
Pretty sure that's a sex move, Phil. Pretty sure that's a sex move.
It is definitely not this topic, but it is the Montauk I accentuated an A where an O is. And here we are. So the Montauk Project. It's pretty fascinating. And what else? The more I read, so I've often been very interested in the Philadelphia Project, and this leads into that. And I think that's where we'll start. For those of you who don't know what the Philadelphia,
by the way, I still haven't forgiven you for bringing this topic up, period, because that is literally a week of my life. I feel dumber for having done the research in this thing. And I don't believe any knowledge is useless. However, I believe everything I've learned about this is pretty much useless.
I think this is the most researched topic that I've done. And because I was trying to find things that made sense. Yeah, but I don't know. We'll let you guys judge for yourselves on some of the information. Maybe we're wrong, and feel free to leave a comment. And don't forget,
we're not going to judge. We're not going to judge this. We're going to present facts in a manner that shows we're judging.
I think anyone who has any ideas about this, I couldn't tell them they're wrong because I don't know. Right. So this is born of the Philadelphia experiment. And if you don't know what that is, basically the US government was trying to find a way to cloak warships. So they were using a technology that was based on our good friend Albert Einstein. It was called the unified field theory. And what that means, it's a pretty big fancy word to amalgamate electromagnetism and gravity and focus it into a singularity, creating, they thought, a cloaking effect on the ship. Turns out, something, and this is a completely separate podcast, the Philadelphia experiment. So I'm trying to give you kind of a synopsis. Apparently, this technology was derived from the Nazis, like a lot of things.
Apparently all of Western civilization at this point.
Everything that
rockets, vaccine, you name it. It's all Nazis.
You want to come and work for us? Okay. We pay you very well. Get on the state in California. So during the testing, things went wrong. Horribly wrong. The witnesses claim that the ship, once they turned this so it was outfitted, retro-rigged. It's the USS Eldridge, a brand new destroyer, brand new battleship. And so basically, big green light surrounded the Eldridge, and then it disappeared, just like that. So the next thing that happens is that it reappears, but not in port. So the port where they were was in New York, and they end up being rematerialized in Norfolk, Virginia. So
now, just a point of clarification. This is the Philadelphia experiment conspiracy, not anything that's actually been released about what the Philadelphia experiment actually was, whether it exists.
That's correct. This is a preamble to. Sorry, it wasn't New York. They were in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So anyway, they're seen by another ship, the SS Andrew Furoseth or something. And so there is documentation that the ship was seen, even though there is no logs. There was eyewitness accounts and people that, on the ship that confirmed that they saw this glowing orb. I don't know how much time passed, but the ship ended up returning, rematerializing in Philadelphia, hence Philadelphia experiment. And once they did, the Eldridge, a lot of the sailors that were on board actually melded with the ship. That was one of the...
Like a transformer or an Autobot.
Not so much melded as in a working part, but more as
like parts of. Not in the good working way.
No, not a good working way. Like bodies entangled in the ship's steel, and that's the rumor. Also, most of the staff got very sick, and those who did not get very sick went very crazy. So that, and then, That's sort of the
So
Eldritch.
funny thing about this, when was the Philadelphia experiment? It was like 1940-ish?
It was 1943, I believe.
So there were a bunch of other, so are you familiar with the diffused lighting camouflage experiments the Royal Canadian Navy was using?
No.
So nowhere near as sexy or interesting. It was basically they were trying the same thing to make makes boats invisible by using diffused lighting techniques to go off against.
Okay, I have heard of that. Yeah.
So they wouldn't show up against the sky. They didn't use whatever electromagnetism and gravity and
who knows?
I don't think anybody merged with bulkheads in the diffused lighting experiments that.
And so what happens is the Navy apparently scraps the program. Now there's a lot of speculation. Once again, another podcast. There's so much cool stuff with this one. Yeah, really a lot of cool stuff, and I don't want to get into it because I chose the Montauk Project instead. This particular topic. And I don't want to say that to disappoint you, because I mean, some people really believe in this stuff, and that's fine. I believe in a lot of stuff maybe other people find crazy. Fair enough. Here we are. So as the story goes that I could read, and you can correct me if you've read something else, but which there's a lot of conflicting information. So the idea was that the Navy said, okay, we're done. We've lost some soldiers. They're now still in the ship. We're never going to get that.
I think they're called sailors. They prefer to call them sailors.
Sailors. Sorry.
Yeah, Navy people would get really upset with you if you called them soldiers.
Correct. You're right. I never even thought of that. Very good. I apologize to the Navy.
In the Navy.
I know. And I could have a beard in the Navy. I mean, I respect that. So
you know why you couldn't? Did you know why traditionally they didn't like the beards?
Lice. No. Oh, the gas masks. Wasn't it? Gas mask.
Prevents a proper seal. Apparently they don't care about that anymore.
Have a beard mask that you can find on Etsy. Beard masks. They are what the future is for beards. Anyway, so the Navy's like, yeah, fuck this. We're done. And then what happens next is the department, like the government, no idea what branch. See, maybe CIA, somebody says, yeah, we're not done, but we need funding. So the project goes to D&D, Defense Department, their version of the defense.
DOD, Department of Defense. D&D is the Department of National Defense in Canada. It's DOD in the US. I'm assuming it was the same them too. It might have been called something different. But.
So, it goes to them, and then it's pretty much off the radar, right? So it's like endless budget type idea. This is what all of these programs tend to get, where you see Roswell and you go, or not Roswell, you see Area 51, you go, oh yeah, they have a big budget because, well, they're building, all these things. There's documents of that. There's proof of that. So, along the lines of a budget for this doesn't exist, as far as I could.
It's completely falls under the category of the black budget, the black budgets, right? Where you basically have no oversight, no nothing, no tracing. It's the money goes into a hole. Nobody even knows where it came from. Nobody knows where it's going. All you know is that you're now down money.
Yeah. So what happens next is the Montauk Air Force Base is a small, tiny little base. It's in Long Island. It's just south of the Hamptons or north of the Hamptons. It's got waterfront property. Beautiful. And it's also retrofitted. So it was disguised as a small fishing hamlet with lots of big guns. Like anti-aircraft guns.
Well, because it originally existed. It existed to defend against boats, submarines coming in as part of the whole. Yeah.
It was a fully functional base, and it was an Air Force base. So then what happens is, they're believed that during its time, there was an underground complex made. There is a system of tunnels underneath. Now, if you go on YouTube, there's tons of these videos of people kind of lurking around. It is still under quite heavy surveillance or like security. You don't want people falling in holes and dying. I don't know if that's what.
And suing.
And suing, yeah. Probably for their own safety, I would think. But so yeah, and that's kind of where Montauk begins. Now, everything about Montauk stays quiet, very quiet, like for 40 years. And then in 1980, we meet a fellow by the name of Preston Nichols. Don't sigh too hard. I know.
Yes.
I know. And he claims, after watching a documentary on the Philadelphia experiment, that he
Was it a documentary or a movie? When
might
was
have
the
been a
movie,
movie.
The Philadelphia? I think it was everything I've read about this seems to be this movie triggered a
Yes.
bunch of people, and like
him in
it's-
particular, because I didn't. There was a few other people there, but he seemed to be the.
I know of two others that were sort of triggered by the movie, whatever.
Well, there was Peter Moon, who helped co-author his book, The Montauk.
Yeah, that's his pen name. What was his original name?
Oh,
Peter
that was
Moon
his pen name?
Yeah, I'm trying to. God, where did I put this?
Oh.
Yeah, I believe it was his pen name.
Maybe it was.
That's not. I don't have.
Well,
I had it somewhere. This is
okay.
This is the problem with this. Just so much stuff about this.
There's a lot of stuff. Hold on one second. Clear my throat here. I'm doing a lot of talking about the Montauk. All right. So yeah, anyway, he writes the science fiction book, Montauk Project. And he says to his readers, and basically is if you believe it, great. And otherwise, take it as a work of science fiction. That's okay too. Enjoy the book.
Yeah, he calls that out very explicitly, saying
he does. It's like okay, yeah. So a lot of this, and maybe I should kind of talk about that too, is it actually, and I didn't know this beforehand. One of these shows that my son watches, and I watch it too, is called Stranger Things, and the original name of Stranger Things was Montauk. That's what they were going to use. Why they didn't use it, I don't know. But
I do wonder if there is apparently was the inspiration for it. So I suspected they used actually the Montauk, then it would be a clearer tie to like, wait a second, you owe us money. You owe the guy who owns the book.
Maybe the book. Yeah. So maybe
right?
That's why they, yeah. And in the story, and it's a wonderful, like, I really like it. It's very well acted. I know you haven't watched it.
Very heartwarming. I read the Wikipedia article on it.
Yeah, I know. You missed out. I'm just saying.
Apparently her father was very aggressive with the negotiations for the future seasons.
You mean 11?
Yeah. Millie something.
I don't know.
What's her name? Yeah.
I'm not hip. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. So, but it was based, loosely on this, the experiences that were described, I think, in a lot of Nichols's books.
Okay, so let's get to some of the high points of this experience. So yeah. Preston is triggered by his and what happens.
So he figures out that he was once a trainer of these individuals, pretty much known as the Montauk Boys. Also an engineer, also a parapsychologist and psychologist.
Yeah. And multiple degrees. Sound familiar?
Three degrees.
Bob Lazar.
Bob had one.
A college diploma or something.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. Leave Bob alone. You're always picking on Bob, and I like Bob. At least certainly Bob made sense and spoke in complete sentences. For the love of God. Anyway, yeah. So he describes, training these young recruits in the ways of like psychic warfare and telekinesis, mind control, and of course the big one, time travel for sure.
Yeah, like the year 3000 something, like it's or 6000.
So I read one of from the videos, and you actually sent me one of those videos.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I had to make you suffer as I suffered.
Yes. So one of the videos is like they went back to the time of Jesus. So actually, there's one before that. I'll talk about. Well, let Jesus wait a moment. the first one that he described in one of his interviews was going to Mars. Yeah. So they used the Montauk chair, which is basically a focal point for psychics or well, people with special powers. It could work with anyone. It could work with you, Corey. You lay down in this thing and suck the very will to live out of you.
And it's like basically it's playing around with the this plays back to the Philadelphia experiment with the whole unified theory, right, where it allows them to manifest. I think object creation was one of the ones that they said the chair was capable of doing. Like it's supposed to focus, and there's other really weird stuff. I'm not going to touch on it because the video touched on it that Phil looked at, and
well,
we're going to try not to touch on those parts.
Yeah, so there was a lot, like ripping holes in the fabric of time, and it was very sci-fi-esque, right? So basically, though, and a lot of people are skeptical because he was part of this project, but then admittedly, he says that all these boys were abused in a very,
like a 1% survival rate.
1% survival rate was, and that came from, we'll talk about him in a moment, but that was Stewart. But yeah, so there was, these boys were, this all ties into Mars. So let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Fair enough. And this, so folks, this is the problem with this whole ball of crazy, just trying to pick out something that makes some semblance of,
I've done the best I can here.
We have a crazy board. There will be a crazy board with the notes. You can try and follow along, maybe add your own.
Yeah, and you can, because you'll figure it out. So back to Mars. So one of the first trips that they did was they teleported to Mars because there are pyramids on Mars.
Yeah, so that was something you saw a lot of the 80s, 90s, the face on Mars, right?
Until Elvis. They could actually use proper, equipment to go, that's just.
And we're just assuming that they had an atmosphere, like none of the readings suggested that they had any form of EVA equipment, like extravehicular activity, like spacesuits, anything. It's just they went there, and I think we know why they had a 1% survival rate.
Right. So they went there. The pyramids are locked. Who would have thought? So they come back. And this is, I guess, where they have some alien interaction. And the aliens, the Greys, he calls them the Greys, provides them with sort of a little bit more technology to help them understand the universe. And
because they made several versions of the chair, didn't they? There was the first version. There was at least a second version. I think there was a third version that was never completed or was decommissioned or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And they talk about the second version with the alien incorporating the alien technology to enable all these more awesome feats rather than just,
like universe travel, the end of the known universe. Like not our galaxy, the entire, since the Big Bang Theory happened. Yeah. And he claims that. He claims that he's seen that. He's sort of found spirituality, Mr. Preston Nichols. He is very different. He's a different kind of soul.
He's also dead, apparently.
Is he really?
Yeah, he died of a stroke, I believe, or heart attack.
Well, that's shocking.
Yeah, I want to say a stroke. Yeah.
Well, may he rest in peace.
Yeah.
His story is being told right now. So they make it to Mars. They make it back. And then there's a few accounts. This is sort of where there's this fellow named Stan. I don't know if that was in one of the videos that I watched.
Stan? No, I didn't hear about Stan.
That's all that is mentioned is Stan. That Stan was commissioned to go back. Now, Stewart also says, so Stewart Swerdlow, who is a fellow that watched a lecture from Preston Nichols. He was interested in this sort of stuff, and he watched a lecture and then suddenly realized that he was brainwashed and he was actually
repressed memories, right? They were brought up through hypnotism, and all of a sudden he's now remembering all this.
And he goes to Nichols and he says, I think I was there. And Nichols says, of course you were. I remember you. Come join my fantasy. come with me. And so yeah, Nichols takes him, and they together, unrepress all of his memories. And then apparently he was sent back to kill Jesus.
Yeah, he was sent back twice, right? Once to kill Jesus, which he couldn't bring himself to do.
Yeah. And then the second time was to take his blood, to remove Jesus's blood in order to replace it in his body, right? And to come back. And then they were going to use the shroud of Turin.
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 Which and compare the DNA, right? Say, well, look, it's the same DNA, therefore this guy's the Messiah.
This guy is the second coming of Christ. His name is Stuart Swerdlow. All hail Swerdlow. Yeah. So that's where then it gets weird.
Yeah, then it gets weird.
It's weird. So you have this whole thing based on time travel. You have it, so Preston is like, not only is he a trainer of these boys,
like a Pokemon trainer.
Yeah. So some of the experts say that they would have abducted these boys which has happened before. This is
it's not unheard of.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not unheard of. I mean, there are realistic horror stories out there of homeless people being abducted. Normally, organ harvesting is a big thing. I don't think they do a lot of unauthorized experiments, but they'll harvest organs.
Yeah, and the CIA admitted to some of this stuff during their projects. So this is also where there's a lot of intertwining in this conspiracy. So you have the MK Ultra, which is another podcast all on its own. I don't want to get into it deep.
And it's actually been done to death. Like, didn't they do that movie, MK Ultra?
I don't know.
Was it James Franco or something? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I know the basis of it. I know that it was mind control, and the CIA was, trying to
LSDing everybody. It was there were a couple aspects to it, but the big one people remember is they were dosing people with LSD with or without their knowledge.
Right. And they wanted to see what would happen if you put a pound of LSD into somebody and see how they trip on that. So they were lab rats, right? For these.
Are you familiar with Pavlov?
Oh, and it's salivating dogs.
So you have two types of conditioning. You've got Pavlov's dogs and Skinner's rats. So Pavlov was classical conditioning. That's where I ring the bell, the dog drools, despite me not bringing it food because I've associated the two. And then operant conditioning is, and I don't remember too much about that, but it was B.F. Skinner basically using remote to get rats to do stuff.
Go through mazes and stuff, I believe.
Yeah.
Right?
So
yeah, it was like a reward based.
Some of those things played into some of the stuff they were trying to do with MK Ultra of getting people conditioned. This is the sleepers, the triggers, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes from Ghostbusters is when Bill Murray, the guy is like, he's got the guy and the girl in the college, and then they're guessing cards, and the guy's getting everyone right. And Bill Murray is like, he slaps the guy, and the girl gets them wrong, and he's like, oh, you're amazing. And like everyone
seems a lot like the Montauk Project,
right? So he gets zapped, but he was getting every card right, which was kind of funny, right? But Bill Murray's like, I'm sorry, John. No more. Anyway,
spits out his gum at one point, I think.
He does, yeah. Like, I thought it was a tooth when I was young. Anyway, so there's now you have what the chair and the giant dish. So on top of a lot of conspiracy theories about the dish. So it's a giant, they call it a sage dish because, sage is basically it's a radar dish.
It's part of the dual line, similar to what we talked about previously about the whole sage installation we have in North Bay where it goes off. And
that's right. So these dishes there's not a lot of them. They're big. I think at the time there was like 4 or 5 of them in North, like in that area. So they were that's why they had anti-aircraft weaponry as well, because they were there to defend, the coastline, or be an early warning system for U-boats or planes or ships or whatever. Now, so they use that dish to amplify even more, like the power of these psychic kids, right? So Yeah. Um,
Are you familiar with the Stargate or Project Stargate?
I remember the TV show.
Not even
So
remotely close. So this plays into, so this is when you
yeah,
talk, so when you would put the link to MK Ultra. So we did the crazy board
right.
up, and I
Yeah.
haven't added this in, but you start following through, and then this is the sad part, or the funny part, or the crazy part, whatever you want to think about, that a lot of
Mhm.
the stuff that you hear about in this does have actual documented evidence somewhere else. So the Stargate project
Mhm.
was run by it was a code name for a US Army project. Now it was
Oh, okay.
established like 1978, so it was much later, and it
Right.
basically involved remote viewing. So using psychics to
Psychics.
go off and
Spy on
gather
people.
intel.
That's right.
Sorry.
Spy. It's a spy on
Yeah.
people.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the end result, and they say it was biased after, and they closed it down around 1991 ish. There was like
Did
they weren't
they?
replacing people who were leaving it.
Did they
So
really?
yeah,
Did they shut it down?
they shut it. They claim to shut, just like Camp Heroes / Montauk Air Base. They say they shut it down. Did they?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
But in
No.
this case, the eventual finding was, hey, there's two thoughts. One, it did literally nothing, it was a big waste of money. The other one is, and they said the fellow who came up with this was biased. He said it was like a 5 to 15% above raw chance.
Oh. Well,
So
that's
the
not very
people
good.
who were able to point out, hey, I see a missile silo, hey, I see 5 people, they would compare that with intelligence they had, and the raw chance, let's say the raw chance was
Just
20%.
luck. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Raw luck. I'm just randomly pulling it up, and they said statistically it was 5 to 15% greater than just raw luck.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
So
whatever.
that leads into again, the Montauk Project itself. One of the things I talked about is the seeing eye.
The
Uh,
remote. Well, no, that's the chair. This is this
yeah.
all
Yep.
compassing chair that, and now the chair apparently, and that's why the death rate, like depending on the person, like they could die, or be teleported somewhere and end up in a wall or some horrible thing. Yeah. So I'm okay with, and I believe that there's been a lot of development and work with psychic abilities. I think that, that's a big unknown. We know very little about the human brain, even though we know what it's made of, but we don't necessarily know its
Made out of
capability.
people.
The people. Well, and that's it. But this story goes like pretty deep, like including where, the aliens actually provided these abductees. And the deal was this: we give you the abductees, but when they die, you give them back to us and we eat them.
So the one I read is that the whole base has a bunch of people, a bunch of kids buried under it.
Well, they don't eat them, but they do something to draw the energy out of them. I don't know.
The
Anyway,
chroma.
Yeah, that was another thing that I watched. And I'm like this is deep, deep stuff. Wow, where are we going with this? So yeah, other than the Mars, the pyramids, blood of Jesus,
Time travel.
time
I
travel,
remember reading something. So where was it where
lots
they
of
said
time
they were
travel.
sent to like the year, a city in the year 3000, and and this is okay. FYI, folks, this is really crazy. It reads like fan fiction, and it's hard to
Yes.
sort the actual. Of course, Nazis are involved in all of this, by the way. Just
Yes.
keep that in mind.
Aren't they
Nazis,
always?
history's whipping boy. That's what you get. You be baddies. Guess what?
This is what happens.
This is what happens.
Everyone blames you for everything.
So they talk about Nazis, and they say they were sending people into the. Let's see, 1 second. Here, I'll pull up the. It was like the year 6000. Here we go. Okay, so apparently they were sent to the year 6037 to investigate a ruined city. There, they had to examine the statue of a horse and report back on what they saw. Apparently, they were Aryan. They had to be exclusively male, aged between 10 and 16, tall, blonde, blue-eyed, and fair-skinned. Most, if not all, fit the idea of the Aryan stereotype. And this, FYI, is just, I guess I haven't read the book, but if you look on the cover of the book, the Montauk Project, it shows a statue of a horse.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's
it. That's fine.
I don't know. I didn't want to delve too deeply. Fun fact,
I don't want to get sucked into this.
apparently the time travel aspect of the Montauk Project was actually called Phoenix 3.
They had a bunch of different names, and I didn't
Yep.
really want to confuse myself. I would say perhaps the viewers are way smarter than I am, but yeah, I didn't want to.
So this is where we talk about history, right? So the original Phoenix 1 was basically how the US can win in Vietnam. Apparently, it involved like torture, intelligence gathering with the NVA, that sort of stuff. Phoenix 2, apparently the scientists are, again, it makes no sense what I'm reading. Apparently the scientists from that Phoenix, which essentially sounded like just raw torture,
Yes,
formed the Montauk Project, which was Phoenix 2. That was the start where they started doing all the stuff. And then the time travel aspect was Phoenix 3, apparently. So take it for what it will.
So that's the other thing, is that there was parts about, being sexually aroused helped with psychic ability.
That's what I didn't want to touch on, because that's where the abuse aspects, like it's not just beating with hoses. It's actually sexual abuse of boys,
of boys. But I mean, I think it's worthwhile, at least acknowledging that this would be something that Preston Nichols would have had to partake in, right? Obviously, he denies it. He says that I was a trainer, but I didn't do any of the bad stuff.
I just taught them to look at the cards. He was Bill Murray, right, with the cards.
He's Bill Murray. He's like, they're in there getting beatings, and he's just doing his own thing. If it is true, that's
I think, and that's where that Serlo guy goes off and talks about. Now, I don't think he goes deep into his as being sexually abused. Like, I know he says he was pretty screwed up from it, and that's why there were all the repressed memories and brainwashing. But
he's the one who says that about 1% of the boys that he recalls survived, right? And in his thing, he's got a list of powers that he possesses.
Yes.
Be it, who am I to judge? I mean, sure, but proof, right? Proof is in the pudding. So if you can prove these things, then yes, sure. And that's what we're here for.
Is that what you're? Because again, there is very little hard evidence. Now, again, the idea there's just all linkages, but
they all come back to one place, though. We noticed that on your board, and you folks, if you're watching, don't forget to subscribe,
subscribe,
leave a comment. Also, if you've watched this far, if you leave a comment and a suggestion, maybe, just maybe, we'll do a podcast on what you suggested. And if we do, we will do a name throw out. We'll throw a party in your name. That's what we'll do.
Yeah, unless your suggestion is for us to go F ourselves. We are not going to do a podcast about that.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Apparently that's what happened in the Montauk Project. There was a lot of that going on.
There was a lot. I think there's a lot of unknowns, and whenever people make up their own minds, right? And
now, how did this all end, Phil? So let's I guess we can run through it, and then we can sort of because we might as well finish off the story and then come back to the parts that are
the ending is almost as fantastic as the beginning. So somehow somehow they managed to pull some sort of giant rage beast out of a dimensional portal.
Beast from the id.
Is that what they called it?
That's what it's called. Yeah.
It is a giant, nasty. They don't really have much of it. It was just a large killer animal. And apparently it just wreaked havoc on the entire base, killing multiple people, etc., etc. And I didn't really read anywhere where they killed it.
The only thing I read was that they basically the scientists, because scientists had to destroy the equipment, right? And by destroying the equipment, that sent it back or got rid of it.
Yeah. Well, I think that Preston Nichols says that he was part of that too, and that he can prove that in the base there's areas that are like charred, and and inside is quite literally destroyed. Now, is that from just homeless people, or it is a park? That is what Montauk is now, is sort of a national.
Camp Hero State Park or something.
Yeah, and Camp Hero, that's right. Because originally, that was Colonel Hero was base commander. Colonel
Destined for greatness.
Destin, he'd be just rolling over in his fucking grave. Like, can you imagine?
The area has such a fascinating history.
Yeah.
It has such a fascinating history. This, and apparently the locals just hate all this Montauk Project stuff because the area is so rich with history. And it's like,
it's rich. It's the Hamptons. This is some of the most valuable property in the world. And what do you have? This rundown, base that everyone's like thinks they're fucking monsters. And not far away, you have this place called Plum Island. I don't know. That's another conspiracy story.
it's
a laboratory.
The animals, right? It was
it's an animal laboratory.
Fun fact: the island of bunnies in Japan. Yeah, basically they used to do biological warfare, like the testing there. Bunnies? Like they used to go off and do the experimentation. And when they shut up shop, they just basically let go all the animals. So the island is literally overrun with rabbits.
Well,
yeah,
they're
you can go there and get
breeders. You remember it being on my house with rabbit cages.
Yeah,
they do backflips, man. They just love to go at it. I'm telling you. Anyway, quite the thing to watch, folks. If you've never seen rabbits.
Oh, that's you're telling to watch rabbits breeding.
It's terrifying. It's horrible. Anyway, so the base was destroyed by some large temporal beast. And then whether it got sucked back into the vortex or not, who knows? Now, there are claims that some experiments, they did find some, and you'll find these pictures, these, the Jersey Devil pictures that have washed up on the shore, and whether or not. This is
relating to the Plum Island thing, right? Or is it?
It isn't. It isn't. No, because they don't know. They might have been experiment. People, have a or they're part of the same project. Right, because Plum Island was a very top secret spot. It's on an island. Man, in case shit goes wrong.
Island of Dr. Moreau, baby.
Yeah, things can't get away. You create killer rabbits. Can you imagine? Big sharp teeth.
I think that. So I remember there's a mythical creature called a jackalope, which is basically a rabbit with antlers.
Isn't that a real thing? Yeah.
I don't know if it's a real thing. I just know that the jackalope, I'm pretty sure it's a made-up creature. I'm pretty sure.
Look at a platypus. Oh my god.
Okay, well that is a legitimate. That nobody knows what nature was thinking when the platypus got spun out. They're like,
that fucking thing lays eggs.
It's poisonous.
And it has poisonous.
Seriously, if you die to a platypus poison, I don't know what happens. Like you'd be looking in the afterlife, they'd be saying, "Ooh, how'd you die?"
Platypus.
Yeah, we're putting you in the same. We're putting you in the same camp with the fella who died in the bathtub with the toaster.
That's right. You're
here. We'll figure. You're not getting into Valhalla that way, buds.
You guys are buddies now. Yeah, they're cute, especially when they're babies. But their rear, little flippers. They got flippers. They got those dew claws that are very poisonous. Yeah, there's some fucked up creatures out there, and we. I don't know. The verdict on this, to me, is I think it all lives and dies by Preston Nichols, and
he's dead. So
he's dead. All roads led to Preston Nichols.
Actually, and that's and so the crazy board. If you were to look at the number of connections it's got, it's all kind of him. It all sort of links into him. Again,
even the Philadelphia experiment, it's almost an alleged. Like there's no proof. It was an Air Force base. It was a fully functional Air Force base with armaments. It had a job, right? And it had crew. It had Air Force men. But aside from that, there's no.
The locals would talk about how the dish would screw up their TV reception, right?
Which is entirely possible.
Which makes complete sense. Now, and I'm sure people got sick. I myself, when I worked at IBM, my first job was working in the tape library. Okay. And one of the activities we had to do was we had to destroy tapes. So old tapes that contained important data that nobody needed anymore, we would have to destroy them. So we would degauss them.
Oh.
Yeah. So the degausser is essentially a big magnet for those who don't know. You run the tapes through. After about 45 minutes of doing that on the dot, I would feel nauseous and want to throw up.
Really?
Yeah, now choosing it's magnetic fields.
Mm-hmm.
A buddy of mine said, well, do you have a good sense of direction? I said, okay, I got a pretty good sense of direction. Like, you spin me around, I can figure it out. He goes, you're probably more sensitive to magnetic fields than than some people are, right? Almost like birds. So birds navigate, apparently, one of the ways they navigate is sensitivity to magnetic fields.
Right.
So in that case, if you were sensitive, and those big that dish is probably like terahertz. Like, that's not a,
for sure. I mean, you're talking about the eastern seaboard. This thing is like seen from like all the way down to like fucking Florida.
not getting HBO on that sucker.
No, you're not having kids if you get in the way of it. It's frying your
people worry about being around power lines.
Right.
I mean, I wonder what the cancer rates are in that area.
It's probably high. It'd be an interesting study, and this thing is sweeping. This is and it's funny you say that, because I had an interesting experience when I worked for a company, and I went and I had to visit this place, and it was a forest product place, and they did veneer.
Okay.
So yeah, but inside the power requirements for this plant was just astronomically high, right? So and I would have to visit quite regularly for my job at the time. And I would go there, and it would be about 3 minutes, and I would start to feel sick to my stomach. Never had this feeling before in
And
my
not
life.
a fume thing. It's literally just
no, it was no
okay.
fumes, no fumes. It was, so when you walked in, there was a big bucket of earplugs, and because it was loud, but it was only when I was in the area where the generators. So they had these giant generators. I mean, the fucking things look like a football stadium size thing, like, or half a football stadium, but just full of generators. And that's what they had to use to power a lot of these machines, right? And I would get close to it, and man, I just start feeling sick. Like, I'd feel weird. Like, I'd have to get out. And
so one of the other theories about why I would get ill around the degazer is subsonics, like the subharmonics, the whole, it's because you said it was loud, and the degazer certainly wasn't quiet. But
no, I don't know if it was the noise, because it wasn't that loud. Like, they made you wear earplugs.
Yeah.
But I would ask,
I want to get sued.
But I would ask some of the staff, and I remember asking this one lady, I said, did you ever feel like, you would feel sick? And she's like, I did for the first year I worked here. She's like, yeah, I don't anymore. I'm like, oh my God. Well, I guess our bodies adjust. I'm getting the fuck out of here. See ya. But yeah, so I think that, we can be sensitive to things that are, maybe I'm more sensitive to certain things than you are, right?
And that's the thing about all this stuff when you come back to the Montauk Project, right? So you've got a large government facility that is secretive. Sound familiar?
Right. Yes.
Right. Now, there's not really any other collaborating evidence.
No.
Area 51, for example, there's lots of collaborating evidence regarding, they've released stuff about their super secret planes. Now, do I think the government would go off and release documents saying, by the way, we used to capture and torture homeless kids?
Yeah. No.
Okay. To send them through time. And we succeeded, by the way, but we decided, we should stop because reasons.
Yeah. Now, I'm not defending any kind of government stuff, because I'm sure there's a lot of shit that goes on that we, are, as regular citizens, go, what the fuck? Like, we would shake our heads. But my problem with the Montauk isn't so much its claims, it's how it's all focused on one individual who made a living writing science fiction books. Right. And to watch the man speak, he reminds me of a schizophrenic. That
very disjointed. Like the 8-minute video I sent you, for example, you listen to him talk, and now it could be editing, I don't know, but you hear him talk, and you're like, okay, wait a second. Now you're talking about aura reading, and you're talking kind of broken about how Jesus, the Messiah thing was going to work. Not a great communicator, for sure. But I never sat through one of his long lectures. No,
and people paid to listen to this guy. He had zero proof of any of his degrees, none. But apparently, he He could talk quantum physics. He could do a lot of weird stuff that
I can talk brain surgery if you don't know brain surgery. I took that my second year of, I took the biological foundations of personality in my second year of university.
That sounds exciting.
No, it's not. When you have to map out all the different holes you've got in your head where all the cerebral spinal fluid goes.
Ew.
Jesus.
That's not
I know how to sacrifice lab animals.
Oh, like
yeah,
kill them.
Yeah. So what you do is you wind up, so you have, while the thing is alive, if you're going, this is the harvest to do brain scan, not brain scans, but to actually look at the brain tissue under a microscope. You take the lab animal. Never did this, FYI. However, we covered this. This was my first class. The professor's plan was to get most people to drop out by starting with this.
Oh, good.
Essentially, you dose the little bugger on barbiturates. So you basically get him, flying high in a kite. And while he's alive, you go off and nick one of the return to the heart, the one that comes with the aorta, ventricle, whatever, and you pump a saline and then a saline solution and then a formaldehyde solution. The idea being is you're making use of the little bugger's heart to run formaldehyde through all the areas that need to go through it, and everything's coming out. You're clearing out all the blood, and all
this is standard practice. This is how they kill the lab rat.
Apparently, this second year. I don't know if they've changed. Maybe they have. And then they would take the little bugger, load the brain into a stereotaxic device, which would allow you to do wafer thin slices of the brain. And then you could take that and put that under.
No, I'm not
the brain itself is kind of gooey.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never played with one. But I understand that we have to use animals to further science. I just, being a person who does hunt and I grew up with animals and having to help to kill them, and I don't believe in making anything suffer.
This little bugger got dosed on barbiturates. I don't think.
Yeah, he's probably didn't feel much. Yeah. I just the whole cut the or I can't imagine he laid there. Yeah, he's high. He's like, whoa.
Well, but he's high, but it's a barbiturate's a depressant, right? So.
Well, yeah, but I guess so.
Maybe how the hell did we get on this topic again?
I don't know. It just happened.
Oh, neuroscience. That's right. So the idea that he could talk quantum physics.
Well, he did. Yeah. And there was, maybe he was smart in his own way. He was a terrible communicator in interviews. Very poor hygiene.
I heard about spam cans. That was one of the things they said. This place was filled with spam. Like when he was living with his father.
Yeah.
Apparently, his mother had a wall dedicated to Yul Brynner. Yul Brynner.
Yul Brynner, yes, yeah. A lot of ladies liked Mr. Yul Brynner. Yeah,
and could carry off bald pretty well.
Carried off. That's right, like Kojak. There's nothing wrong with being bald, Corey. I'm not completely, but I might as well be.
It's just when you see us both wearing headphones that are basically hats.
That's right. Sometimes my head gets cold. I wear a toque. Yeah, but no.
By the way, for our American viewers, a toque is a beanie.
A toque. Or a beanie.
We call them toques here in Canada.
That's right. Yeah. So what's on the menu for next week?
I think we want to hold off on that until we put a fail nail in this coffin.
Oh yeah.
Well, I just want to wrap it
escape?
Up. I'm not. I know. I completely agree with you. So in conclusion, I completely agree with you, Phil. Everything comes back to this Preston Nichols guy and the book he wrote.
That's right. Yeah.
And whether these people have been triggered by the book, whatever, and they found this cause, it helps explain the holes in their life. And we haven't even talked about there's other stuff. Like there's an Al Beck guy. That also known as Ed or Duncan. I think he's known as Ed Cameron. He was apparently on the Philadelphia.
I didn't get into that because it just gets confusing.
And this whole episode has been confusing for me.
Right. Because now the moon landing was also something else that was considered to be done at this base. That's a real thing. People believe
not the actual moon landing. Faking the moon landing was considered.
They teleported.
All right, they could go to Mars. Apparently, they could go to Mars, but they had to fake the moon landing here.
That's right. Yeah, we're gonna send you to the moon, but we have to beat up these boys first. Give us a moment. Lucky. We'll get our sticks.
That's right.
Fine. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah, the moon landing. That was another one. There's a bunch. And but yeah, they all seem to circulate around. You know who he reminds me of is oh my god, I almost forgot his name. Conspiracy guy there.
Alex Jones.
How do you forget Alex Jones?
Apparently you managed. Repressed memories, perhaps?
I think I was.
Were you a Montauk boy, Phil?
I wouldn't have been old. Yeah, I'm not quite there. But you know how Alex Jones, when you hear him, he starts just talking and shit. Like he's all over the place. That's what it was like listening to Preston, Nichols.
And that is very stream of consciousness. Now, this podcast is supposed to be kind of like that, but we do try to put some order to the chaos that is the random conversations.
Yeah, I mean, and that's okay too, right? We're, but this fellow was just out there, and he can say whatever he wants.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's God bless America.
Sure. I mean,
the West, free speech in the West is supposed to be a thing. So it's not just an American thing. Theoretically, you should be able to say, now, some of the stuff he said, when he talks about the stuff, I'm like, how did you not get brought up on charges? You basically admitted to
abuse and all sorts
to abuse or participate or.
But there was nobody to charge him. There was no, right? So there's no, and that's the thing. That's what I mean. Who's going to, who would come out and say, okay, well, you're lying. Ooh, there's
Now, the funny thing about this is it was all prior to the internet.
Oh yeah.
Like, he did this before the internet was a thing. So he put this book out that it was real. And if you spent the effort to get a book published, people tended to trust books more than what you do now for internet.
Stuart Swerdlow, he also did a book, right? So he's made money off this too. So you have people who have interest in this, like they're making money. The Stuart does interviews, and he does, talks and does group talks. He makes money. People pay him to talk about his fantastic journeys, right? To me, that's worrisome. Like where Bob Lazar was like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to make money. I want this to go away.
I spoke to avoid being killed. That's why I came out to avoid being killed.
I was very seriously worried that my wife and I were going to die. So I came out. And then I want to move away and not talk to anybody. And people searched him out. And even then, he was like, ugh. And some of the things Bob said, they came to fruition, like, in terms of elements and some of the projects that he worked on or stuff that he worked on or saw there. I mean, I like Bob. Okay. Don't look at me like that.
Yeah, I know
what you're saying.
I will say what I saw of Bob versus Preston. Hands down, Bob is the better of the more credible. I
think just and now that's not. Hey, you pick your conspiracy, man. I mean, if you're watching this and you're like, I fucking hate these guys. They're shitting all over my Preston Nichols.
And that's not what we're doing. That's not what we're doing. What we're trying to say is I'm trying to avoid being. I'm too judgy at times, and I'm trying to avoid judging. This was a bag of crazy.
It even for me, and I'm a little more probably forgiving than you are in terms of looking at things. Right? You're very analytical.
They need to make sense.
But it still has to make sense, right? Like you still have to kind of say, okay, can I believe in aliens? Sure, if there's some sort of story that's, that makes sense to me. But there's so many different stories that it's hard to kind of put your thumb on one of them, right? So yeah, that's where I'm left with. I'm just sort of I picked the topic and I sort of
regretted it the moment you did it.
No, I didn't, because
I did. Once I started looking into it, I was like, okay, Phil, what have you done?
But you didn't know, just like I didn't know. You were like, oh,
sounds interesting.
Interesting. Yeah. And then your first time reading something, you're like, what the fuck did I just walk into?
So that leads into what I'm picking for next week. So since you did this to me, what I'm doing to you is we're going the Man in the Hat.
Oh my God. Like the alien.
Well, it depends.
The guy that shows up.
Is it aliens? Is it ghosts? Doesn't matter. You'll have to find out next week, folks. Because Man in the Hat. That's what I'm picking. Or Hat Man, or Man in Hat. Yeah, So this will,
We'll find out. It'll be like up here, whatever he really is, Man in the Hat or Hat Man. Well, I guess that's it.
I guess
So-
unless like like I said, I think we closed off and I apologize, folks, because this is the best we could do to make sense of this. Essentially, if the takeaway from this is the Montauk Project was about physically and sexually abusing boys to have them manifest psychic powers such as remote viewing, spontaneous object creation, time travel.
Teleportation.
Insert here. Yeah.
Insert here. Yeah. And feel free to leave a comment. And thank you for listening to the OC. And I'm Phil, and this is my co-host, Corey. And we'll see you next week. Have a great day, night, evening, wherever you are.
You're gonna keep doing that, huh?
Yeah, I love it.
Take care, folks.
Have a good one.